Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of Charity Pulse. My name is Catherine Rostomji. I'm partner and head of charities at Shakespeare Martineau, and I'm joined today by my regular co-hosts, James Saunders of Moore Kingston Smith and Charles Mosquita of Quilter Cheviot. We've got a mixed bag as ever of stories today that have been covered in the press, but before we get started, I just wanted to mention a charity conference I attended this week, organised by the International Centre of Public Accountability, which talked about the charity sector in a fast-changing world. And we had some friends of the podcast that were presenting at that conference. So we had Deborah Alcock-Tyler of Directory of Social Change and Karen Bradshaw of Charity Finance Group. But David Holdsworth, Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, gave an update, and I wanted to do a teeny tiny quick fire round with the pair of you for some interesting facts that he disclosed. So give me a quick guess of the year that the Charity Commission for England and Wales was formed.
Was it 1899?
Close. James, any guess?
1898 then?
No, 1853.
Oh, not that close then.
Not that close. So encourage him. Let's encourage.
I think that's right.
Not the right century.
Yes, good. Charles will love this one because he always likes these facts. But I picked up the latest figure, totally accurate, of the total number of registered charities on the charity register currently. Go.
167,000?
James?
Yeah, I think 168,000 is the sort of banded around number, isn't it?
I can tell you it is 171,560.
Bit of an update. Yeah,
it's on the up. There are 1.4 million people employed in the charity sector. There are 924,700 trustee positions, and £18 billion a year was put into health research by charities, which is 3 times the amount that the government contributed to health research in a year, which I thought was quite staggering. And my last teeny tiny fact, the oldest charity on the Charity Commission register was founded in what year?
It's gonna be something like 1213.
Well, so the charity law brought in charities in 1606, didn't it? So
that was
sometime,
poor laws.
sometime soon after that.
No, before 597.
Yeah.
The King's School of Canterbury was founded in 597.
Okay.
Did you enjoy that, chaps? I thought that was a good warm-up for us, but now we will move on to the business at hand. So the first story I picked up was about new powers being proposed for the Charity Commission to be able to tackle extremism. So where charities are suspected of engaging in or promoting extremist behaviour, there are going to be these new powers to the Charity Commission to be able to close them down if necessary. There was also reference of the mandatory trustee ID verification that is proposed to come in a similar way to how Companies House are doing things currently. So I'll come to you, Charles, whether you'd seen this, whether you thought the new powers were needed, whether it's a good idea.
Yeah, we have sort of covered this in a previous podcast because I think my remark then was bar humbug. I really struggle with this because one, they don't actually explain how big the problem is. So is this a sledgehammer to crack a nut? The second thing is that actually isn't it already covered? I mean, the Charity Commission can remove trustees anyway. And if they are involved in extremism, then surely that's against their purpose. And if it isn't covered, then surely it's covered by the wider laws of the land. So I just don't get this strengthening of the powers that are necessary or needed. I think they really do need to explain it. And the final thing, there was a comment from DCMS about disqualification powers to include about the conduct which promotes or encourages violence. I mean, is that really the Charity Commission's job? Yeah. I thought that was the police.
Good point. James, did you see this one?
I did, and I think that's I can understand Charles's point there, and there's another ability or power or responsibility that has been the Charity Commission has been encouraged to get more involved in, and that's safeguarding. Recently, there have been other stories about charities should do more on safeguarding as well as extremism. And it strikes me that there is all, certainly on safeguarding, there are statutory bodies responsible for safeguarding with children as DFE, and with adult adult education safeguarding, for example, that's DCMS. But the Charity Commission is being asked to do more and more and more in realms that aren't strictly its responsibility, but it's assumed or presumed that it ought to do more on, because it comes into their remit, or it comes into their realm somehow. So I just think they've got to rein in this expectation of the Charity Commission, because otherwise it's going to be all things to all men and do nothing very well.
Absolutely.
Can I add one other thing, Catherine,
Yeah.
which was in the article, which seemed completely and utterly bizarre, was there was a comment about individuals that have been deprived of their citizenship.
Yes.
I mean, sorry, you don't have to be a citizen of the UK to be a trustee. So what's that all about?
Yeah, and just to explain for the listener, the comment was the Commission may be given discretionary disqualification powers to ban individuals deprived of their citizenship from serving as trustees. And I took the same point, Charles, thinking, what's the link there? Being deprived of citizenship doesn't mean that you can no longer be a charity trustee.
I mean, I can only assume that they're thinking about people whose behaviour or have been untruthful or whatever it may be, and therefore are not fit and proper people. Well, can't they disqualify them on that basis anyway? So why has citizenship got a particular preference?
Yeah, I think we're struggling to see the need, aren't we? Although the comment is that this is teeth that the Charity Commission needs. But I don't know that we're necessarily seeing this as being an issue that needs fixing necessarily. But I'll move on in a slightly leading question to the ex-Tory leader, Ian Duncan Smith, who has taken aim at the government for taking small charities for granted. They're not listened to, they're not appreciated. We could say that's the pot calling the kettle black, but he has the right to say what he says. James, I'll come to you first. Any thoughts on, I suppose, the status of small charities and the importance of their work?
Yeah, I think Ian Duncan Smith's always been I think, a champion of the charity sector on the one hand, but on the other, as you say, 13 years of a government not particularly listening to small or any charities, and then having a go at the new government for exactly the same thing sounds a bit, it does sound a bit pot kettle black. In terms of the small charities, yes, absolutely. I mean, small charities aren't listened to enough. We've said before on this podcast, there needs to be stronger, more more punchy umbrella organisations representing these smaller charities. The Small Charities Coalition, I don't think exists anymore, does it? Or it needs reinventing. So those sort of things, yeah, it does need more wider representation.
Absolutely. And Charles, any thoughts? There was also mention of the National Procurement Policy Statement, which is always an interesting area.
I mean, I do sort of slightly smile at all of this because, I mean, Labour should be applauded for the covenant. I was exactly with you, whether it's Conservative or Labour. It does seem to be the kettle pot and black all over again. But the simplest thing they could do is change the way that they fund charities. There was a statistic in that in the article which said 4% of public contracts, were given to the charity sector, which seemed to be a very, very small amount. But we know from personal experience, even as businesses, that the procurement process is, one, extremely arduous, and secondly, comes around on a fairly frequent basis and very costly. And it has a habit of predicating towards large organizations. So, it is never, ever going to work for small organizations that have limited staff who can't afford to apply huge amounts of time with the huge risk of not getting the contract, failure. So if they want to change something, change the way you fund charities, do it for longer, and be more consistent about it, and really build partnerships. Let's not talk about this sort of relationship of, because it just becomes a race to the bottom on price.
And James, would that be your experience of procurement as well? I wondered whether you see this in your role of how a procurement process actually works.
Well, I mean, my experience of procurement, and I think that charities are in the same boat as commercial organisations, is that far too often you get the lowest price, the cheapest offer. If you're getting sort of 40-50% of the evaluation is based on price, you're not going to get the best value for whatever organisation you're procuring for. And that's a source of frustration for me in all sorts of realms, that procurement portals simply don't get the best result for the entity procuring the service, whatever that might be.
Good news is we've got a huge industry out there. Somebody's making money.
Yeah.
Victor Meldrew, yes, he reared his head. And the headline caught my eye, that charities urged to improve nebulous trustee training processes. And many of these remarks came from Priscilla Thomas from the Young Trustees movement. I thought their statements were very bold, and I did wonder whether they have actually been verified and are factual, because the example was being given that many trustees are appointed without any sort of formal recruitment process. Reference was also made to people submitting an application, whether they would then have an interview, which always gets my goat, because when I'm applying to be a trustee, I'm applying to be a volunteer and give up my time. I'm not applying for a job. So I don't want to apply for it with an application and a covering letter and an interview. So whether the two of you had seen this story, Charles, I'll come to you first this time for any comments on some of the statements made.
Yeah, so I mean, they interviewed 1,000 people, didn't they? And I thought what was interesting that came out of it, which again is not going to be a huge surprise, is that there's a low understanding of what trustees do, and something again we've discussed in the past, haven't we? About we should be more vocal about the benefits of being trustees. And I also think the other thing that, of course, is that the increased regulation will be putting people off in the respect there are quite a lot of warnings around the dangers of, etc., of getting it wrong. But the bit that I sort of and the other thing was about training and support. Although I think there is an awful lot of training and support out there if people just look for it.
Yeah.
But maybe we just need to make it more people more aware of it. But like you, I sort of had this. I took it because the lady who was from the Young Trustees made the implication that only trustees are appointed on contact and connections, which is again a really sweeping statement.
Yeah.
But I think yes, this is when you want people, there are a number of different ways of going about finding trustees, which you can use research, you can put it up on LinkedIn and social media. And yeah, there are occasions where you actually know somebody who is highly qualified, got all the skills you need. Why wouldn't you tap them on the shoulder? So I'm really against, but like you, against being formulaic in what we do, because the other accusation was around transparency of recruitment, which, using that word recruitment, we want people to volunteer. You need to engage in a conversation, and it's a two-way dialogue, because you're a bit sort of out there saying, are you interested? This is why you want to do it, and hopefully people will engage in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's that trustee search and attraction and conversation, isn't it? I don't like the reference to recruitment. One of the comments was that even when charities do advertise those roles online, the recruitment can be quite confusing. I think, what? Because I see a lot more on LinkedIn now with people, they are opening it out and saying, this is a charity I'm involved with, this is the great work that it does. We've got these positions available. If that's of interest, please get in touch. Let's have a conversation. So I do think the process is open much more than it is being suggested. James, did you agree with the comments or any thoughts from you?
Yeah, sorry, just 4 out of 5 charities report having at least one vacant board position. Over half of charities, 62%, have 2 or more vacancies. I mean, given that sort of level of vacancies on trustees, I'm struggling to see how there can then be being a trustee is so difficult. It might well be that the trustee position, doesn't suit some people, whoever they are, for timings and all that sort of thing. Surely, if you want to be a trustee, you can find something useful to do in amongst those however many thousands of vacancies. But there will be some roles I would imagine, let's be sweeping about it, in the smaller charities where there isn't a full recruitment process. It isn't needed. But in the much larger, more organised charities, of course, the recruitment process will be much more formulaic. You probably can't win either end of the spectrum. People say it's too formal and too much for a volunteer role, or it's done by word of mouth and tapping up the right people. To me, it seems that it's generally what the charity needs, not necessarily in all cases what the applicant needs or wants. But when there's so many vacancies around, it seems crazy that we're saying people can't get to be a charity because of the recruitment process. That's not the case.
Yeah.
The other thing was that they said a third of the people who responded thought trustees should be paid. I mean, that's just going to make the problem worse, let alone changing the relationship that you have. I mean, as we all know, I've been very anti that because I think it's about giving back to society. But also, I think, this sort of 1 or 2 vacancies on a large number of charities, that hasn't changed, I don't think, in the last 10 years. And I think to me, there are 3 issues. One is that we're not good at going out and telling people. I'm not sure I tell people I'm a trustee of organizations, although very proud to be. And the second thing is, I don't think we're very good at going out into our communities and saying we're looking for people and what we're looking for. And then finally is telling people why they should be doing it and what fun it is and how it will benefit them. So I think this is something that we can change, but I think it's something that just needs some really good, strong communication and some consistently messaging out there.
Yeah, I thought definitely. And also the comment made by the person from Young Trustees Movement was most of the trustees that I know were appointed without any sort of formal recruitment process. And I think, wow, is that an indicative study? I mean, just the people I thought it was a limited application of some of the conclusions that were drawn from that. But I think it does feed into our comments around, whether people know about charities, how you can encourage people to come forward and add to a board that, that's what charities want.
But there's also, isn't there, a criticism about the socioeconomic sort of where people are being recruited from? Well, of course, a lot of people who are professionals have jobs of where their employers can allow them to give up time, where other people that is more difficult. Now, I think we should try and resolve that. And again, I would go back to government. If they want to do something positive, why not legislate to actually give people so that they have a right for 2 or 3 days a year to volunteer?
Yeah.
And get that as part of their paid package, But I think there are things we could do to improve, but I think let's not criticize those that are already doing the job of the 900 and whatever it was that one of your facts at the beginning was.
Yeah. See, Charles, you're not always Victor Meldrew. You see this when you've got this, yeah, a positive end to the session today. So thank you for anyone that's joined us. I hope you found the conversations of interest. Do let us know any feedback or suggestions for future topics. We'd love to hear from you, and feel free to follow and like and share with friends and family on the various platforms where our podcast can be found. And we hope you can join us for a session in the future. Thank you.